Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am Mr. Babble, and welcome to my second list of awesome roguelike games. Now, some of you might be wondering, wait, this is the second one? Where was the first? Well, the answer is it's not on my channel. I made it a few months ago for my friends over at Wolfpack Gaming. I'll put a link to it in the description. I'm kind of hoping this video will draw some attention over there because they're pretty awesome. Thing is, we all have games we've played until we've practically memorized them. Every level, every treasure chest, and the placement of every enemy and boss. So sometimes it's fun to shake things up with a roguelike game where everything is randomized and you never know what's coming at you next. I enjoy these a lot, and so I figured I would try to recommend some of the ones I think you're worth your time. I enjoy these a lot, and so I figured I'd try to recommend some of the ones I think are worth your time and attention. So without further ado, I enjoy these a lot, and so I figured I'd try to recommend some of the ones I think are worth your time and attention. So without further ado, let us begin. And again, just like last time, I'm not going to be mentioning ones that I think are famous enough that everybody's already heard of them, or at least the people who would care have. So I'm not going to be going over Spelunky or Hades or The Binding of Isaac. Alright, that should cover it. Dracula Genesis. Okay, this one's one of the harder ones out there, or at least near the top. You know, Spelunky, Enter the Gungeon. It's not a bad thing, but sweet baby Tesla, this one is insane, and you gotta have quick reactions. See, the thing here is, Dracula was apparently never killed, and he escaped into outer space, where he heavily mutated, and then he, Alright, I'm gonna confess, this game's plot is all in one huge scrolling text dump at the beginning, and I've kind of only skimmed over it, because I want to get to the gameplay. I've never read it through. There's just so many enemies, traps, and hazards. If you don't get really good at the dodge roll, you aren't going to see it through very far. But over time, you learn the reflexes, I guess like any other game out there, and get a little further. Except sometimes, even after a losing round, you still have to learn new tricks, because earning new power-ups and enemies is not dependent on winning. Every time you play, you get progress XP. So if you died 30 times in the first or second area, you still get new traps, enemies, and weapons to deal with. Well, the enemies and traps come free. New gear requires finding it on the map and fighting little waves of enemy rush to add it to the roster of available finds. And rare for games like this, while I do have my favorites, there's none of the weapons I dislike strongly enough to turn my nose up at. And thankfully, as you level up, you get more weapon slots, so there's more choice and strategy. You'll 90% likely have enough XP by the end of Stage 1 to hold a couple at least. It's bizarre and intimidating, with a post-sci-fi apocalyptic feel to it. Toxic waste and horrible mutants everywhere. 8 out of 10 for gameplay, 0 out of 10 for book-accurate Dracula. Urban cards. God, I love this game. One round later, I hate this stupid pile of code. And the next, I love it again. I think that means they made a hard game right. Yeah. It is a card game, so it's not like the others on the list, but it still has permadeath, or at least game over, no continue, start again at the beginning. So I'm counting it, even if extra tries can be earned by luck and random chance. Again, card game, and a heavily randomized one at that, so be warned, you're somewhat at the mercy of the RNG gods in all of it, both in what cards you start with and earn along the way, and in what cards from that deck you get in what order from your hand when you draw out from the pile. No matter how skilled you are, if you don't have that card you need, you just have to tough it out. And at 1 card per round, although some can grant more, and more than 11 plus cards in your draw pile, it can be frustrating hoping for the one you need. That said, I am utterly addicted. Over 180 hours played, but still not beaten with every deck type. I still have 2 to go, but I'll get there eventually. There are 3 factions to choose from, each with their own sets of cards, and as you unlock them via winning a said faction, a 4th random character to choose from. Each, aside from the random, of course, have a specific build composed of certain cards, and they're for different playstyles. 3 theme decks and a randomized cards from that set option. Yeah, that covers it. You lay out your business to earn money, your units to attack and defend, as well as various action and power-up cards to defend yourself, boost yourself, or hinder the opponent, with a goal of cash to earn each round that goes up as you advance. But you can also win or lose if you or your opponent gets too much into debt. I really don't want to scare people off a game I like, but I want to make it clear, while I endorse this one, it is frustrating as hell at times. and you want to go in knowing this is not just a casual game to play while distracted. You can't half-ass it. You're really going to need to engage your thinky-type strategic skills if you want to beat anything but the first few rounds. That said, again, it has hooked me for over 180 hours, 150 times at writing, but it's up to 180 now. So it's doing things right. It's supposed to be difficult. Eratus, Lord of the Dead. I hear a lot that it's basically just a reskin of Darkest Dungeon. That's not true. It's cut from the same cloth as Darkest Dungeon, but the people saying it's the same need to actually play it. It's just not accurate. Very similar, but it's a fraternal twin, not identical. For one, it's a little harder in one key way. There is no level grinding. You can take the longest route you can to get through a dungeon, facing the most battles, and thus the most XP, but you cannot go back and grind levels the way you can in Darkest Dungeon. Also, while both allow you to equip units with stat/ability boosting items, you can, and kind of must have a chance, also equip your Overlord that influences how combat will go. Are you aiming to grind the opposition into bloody mincemeat with weapons? Or break their minds, eroding their sanity until they flee or die of cardiac arrest? Gather parts from defeated enemies, guts, bones, blood, and so on, and use them to upgrade your undead minions, or just make new ones. They're fairly expendable until they're high level, and even then you can gather brains that will instantly level up a new creation to at least close to your current team. Anyway, different minions mean different attacks, so having a variety is important based on what you're facing. Reorganizing enemies' ranks in battle or your own, set them on fire, stun them, damage over time. The list of things to inflict on the living makes for plenty of variety of choice. If I have one petty nag, it just kind of goes with the whole lazy, evil protagonist route like so many other games of the category. While Eratus himself is an evil necromancer out to wipe out the world, the antagonists you're fighting are not much better. They're the good guys guilty of being the iron-fisted, despotic good that commits acts of abuse and slavery for the betterment of all. So the good versus evil is very subjectively so. Basically, if you like Darkest Dungeon, you'll probably lose several hours to Eratus, but maybe don't go in thinking they're entirely similar. Gunfire Reborn. Quick note to salvage my ego, I have not played this in a while and forgot what buttons do what. So in the sample footage, I'm playing even worse than I normally would. Not that I'm claiming to be the best anyway. I don't do much FPS, but I really got into this one. Frantic pace, dodge and shoot, fun, FPS. First player shooter. The player types are all anthropomorphic? The player characters are all anthropomorphic animals with weapons, but they're styled for cuteness and cool factor, not the overly sexualized cartoon animal thing you see off and on. Ugh. You start with the basic, game standard, it's okay-ish starting gun, but from there, what weapons and power-ups you find or buy are up to the RNG gods again. So you might get a lightning bow, or a handheld dragon that breathes fire on command. Autofire rockets to ponderous rocket launchers and beyond, with various buffs and boons to gain stuff like increased damage, clip size, or effectiveness of a weapon's elemental bonus. Animate statues, flesh-hungry beetles, possessed armors, and all kinds of mooks stand between you and the next door, but I really want to spotlight here are the boss battles. As often happens in roguelike games, even the bosses are somewhat random, and you can't be sure which one you'll face playthrough to playthrough. And while each level does have one of a few bosses at the end, I really feel that this is where the game shines. My favorite is probably the big fish bug thing. Yeah, in the second level, the desert. But they're all pretty cool and individual enough not to feel samey. This one is awesome. It's really worth a try, and apparently the Penny Arcade guys like it too. Or at least Tycho. Crypt of the Necrodancer. This one is simple in design, but do not confuse simple with easy. You have to stick to the beat, moving, attacking, pretty much everything, and you have to do it fast, on tempo. Also, this is not really one to play with the sound off, because while there is an on-screen indicator for the beat, you can't really keep your eyes on it with monsters all over the place, and it's just more satisfying when going along with the music. Very easy to get swarmed, and being surrounded is a death sentence. So you have to dodge and attack when you can, and attacks can become more effective the longer you go without missing the beat. Whole lot of characters and gear to earn, dozens of enemies with their own attack patterns to master, and you can unlock the option to challenge any floor of the crypt you choose, once you've beaten it, to get practicing on a full run, when you normally don't get much time to learn the later levels, especially in a roguelike game. One-on-one, the monsters are nothing, but when you're surrounded on all sides, they all have different move patterns, and you've got to stick to the rhythm, and, well, you got to be sharp so as not to fall flat. No, I'm not sorry. The different types of weapon all have different attack patterns and whatnot, as might be expected, so you can probably find something that suits you. Maybe one that dashes out straight in front of you, or hits a wider area but not quite as far away. I myself tend to favor longswords. I like to keep a distance between me and the enemies. Anyway, I hope you'll enjoy this one. Moving on. Enter the Gungeon. I left this one off the first video thinking it was too widely known to include on a list of stuff people might not have seen. But yeah, I keep meeting people who've never heard of it, so here we go. Enter the Gungeon is a mullet hell? Oh, typing fingers. Enter the Gungeon is a bullet hell, roguelike room-to-room action game with frantic pace and degree of wordplay and punning that will make some people cringe. You will face the Ammoconda, the Gore Gun, the Drag Gun as well. Anyway, most of the bosses and swarms of mooks are in some way gun, bullet, explosive, or otherwise weapon-related, including ghostly hollow points, spellcasting gungerers, and the fiery, blazing muzzle flare. Also, unsurprisingly, the Gungeon has guns. Like, so many guns. All the guns. Other people's guns. A gun that shoots out rapidly firing shotguns. A meat launcher that attracts hungry tigers to maul any enemies near the bait. A hive gun that shoots out bees! Anyway, yeah, and I was not kidding. Other games' guns, too. Metroid's roll bombs, Bond's golden gun, Mega Man's hand blaster, Earthworm Jim's heck blaster, and so many more. The full list of guns is astounding, and it's up to the cursed gods of RNG once again to determine which one you get. Yeah, there's a host of NPCs to rescue from the Gungeon, adding various shops and quests to the start nexus. And I admit, there are some pretty good non-gun power-ups to be had, but the allure of this one is a game where you're firing fish out of barrels, explosive packages from mailboxes, at the endless legions of the gun dead. So pick your character, and set off on your quest to achieve the gun that can kill the past. I mean, everybody has some ugly aspect to their history they're not too happy of, but if you could literally murder those bad choices, your life would probably be a lot better. At least I assume so. We don't really get much follow-up on them. Moonlighter. This time, the dungeon crawl is just the side hustle, a means to an end. The dungeon is where all the cool stuff is, and you need lots of cool stuff to keep the shelves stocked to satiate the endless needs of the consumer market capitalist machine. Like your father before you, you run a shop called Moonlighter, title drop, and I assume, because dealing with things like shipping and orders and handling vendors is a lot of tedious paperwork, you instead venture down into the murder beast-infested territories to kill said beasts, take their stuff and or bits of their carcasses, and bring it back to town to sell in your store. This can lead to some unexpected questions, given the unexpected and random nature of people coming into the shop. I will always wonder, deep in the back of my head, why a little old grandmother lady needed all of the highly potent slime acid she bought. Oh well. The dungeon to get loot and sell concept is not entirely unique, but this one is worth trying, even if you've played similar. They put a lot of effort into the little microeconomy of the shop. New, never-before-sold items, you have to guess what price people might pay and inch it up or down if it's not selling or selling out too quickly with and you think you can get a better profit. So you can't just sell the same stuff forever either. You have to vary up what areas you farm, as selling too many of the same products soon means supply outweighs demand, and what was selling for 500 cash a piece now only sells for 150. Improve your shop. Improve the whole dang village even, by helping pay into new investments into businesses seeking to open up. Hope you have better luck than I do at not getting killed with a sack full of stuff that would have sold big if I had left the run early and not opted to try for more and losing it all for my greed. Still a good game, though. Neon Chrome. This one is a bit disjointed story and gameplay-wise. It says you're overthrowing an evil corporation, but all the things you fight are flying skulls, radioactive horrors, and occasional giant clown heads. Nothing really that feels particularly dystopian cyberpunk megacorp about anything you encounter. Oddly enough, as story means next to nothing in a frantic-paced omnidirectional twin-stick shooter, none of this matters. Pile on the weapons, assist familiars, and various boosts to burn, slice, and obliterate your way through monsters, robots, and corrupt god beings representing the 7 deadly sins. Although some of the later endgame bosses lack this theming. I really love the visuals. This one's all cyberpunk lasers and chrome. The enemies, while nonsense, are fairly unique and look cool, and the variety of weapons, for the most part, all play well. Most games at least have 1 or 2 weapons you hate seeing come up, as is fairly standard, but I tended to do well with almost everything. Oh, and there's hidden levels, secret rooms, new characters to unlock, and much time to be killed with this one. It really hits that sweet, okay, one more game. Okay, this time I mean it. This will be my last game for now. Just one more round. I really mean it this time. Sweet spot. I can't think of any specific unique component that makes it stand out uniquely, but it makes this list because everything it does do, while not groundbreaking, is damn well done. It's just a lot of fun to play, and that is praiseworthy in and of itself. Ratropolis. Okay, opening with one big lie busted. These are not rats. The game is called Ratropolis, and many of the cards identify them as such, but look at them. Those round-cheeked little guys are mice. Those are totally mice. Round ears and everything. They don't have the pointy rat ears. Anyway, the game is a lot like tower defense, with enemies coming in timed waves, but in Ratropolis, your base is at the center, and the But in Ratropolis, your base is at the center, and the opposition swarms in from either or both sides, so you have to split available defenses both ways. Melee and ranged soldiers, traps and siege towers, spells, and various buildings to construct to either directly aid in battle or boost resource gain and other benefits. What you have on hand is decided first by the class you chose, merchant, soldier, scientist, etc., each with their own strengths and weaknesses. Then, dependent yet again on those not-so-merciful, often mercurial gods of random chance card procedure. Use what cards you can afford and are appropriate, then once the hand timer ticks down, you can draw a new hand of cards, returning unused ones to be shuffled into the draw pile. Units need to be fed, mercenaries need paying, and new cards and upgrades to said cards don't come cheap, so earn what you can to keep those walls fortified. The lizards and mutants are coming, and you have to be ready or die. Oh, one little side note, from the castles to the swords and armor, this game looks like ye olde fantasy, but it's not. It's apparently post-rad rodent apocalypse. Rat manatee all but wiped themselves out with, I don't know, bombs or whatever, and have struggled society back into the Dark Ages after nearly wiping it out. The scientist class can even scavenge tiny little mouse robots out of technology to add to his army forces. It's cute, it's fun, and it is not easy. Ratropolis. Give it a try. Dungeons of Dreadmore. I like humor in games, so I might be biased in favor of this one even from the start. It's not like off-the-walls, full-on Parodius level, wacky, zany all the time, but you will possibly summon a mustache golem, so this is not grimdark fantasy adventure. I mean, there is an undead wizard to kill, Dreadmore. I mean, his name's in the title. Good God, he cheats like a son of... his abilities are carefully weighted out to provide a solid challenge. Also, he cheats. I like my buffs. I need my buffs. Stop burning away my buffs. It hurts and it takes away... Anyway, yeah. Dungeons & Dreadmore is a 2D, top-down, isometric RPG with simultaneous turns. You move, the enemies move. A lot depends on playstyle and the skills you choose at layout. Go for weapons mastery to be the best at swords, crossbow, or any of the other weapons. Maybe go with the spellcaster angle with blood magic to leech life force from foes. Traps and gizmos, berserker fury, and more. All can be yours, or at least 6 skills per run. Just be warned not to rely too heavily on any one skill. I was the god of hellfire for a while, raining blazing death on all who stood before me. Right up until the volcano level, where everything is either resistant to, if not actively made of, fire, and I got my head handed to me hard. So yeah, diversify those skill points you get at level up a little bit. You can have all the maxed out skills and axes you want, but if the RNG keeps dropping swords, you're going to have a rough go of it. In fact, you're probably going to have a rough go of it anyway. It is a roguelite after all. So even a run with favorable RNG isn't going to be a cakewalk. And again, much like other games, try not to get surrounded. It's good advice other places, but here it is really deadly. Dungreed. This is, at time of posting, my newest addiction. I really love the awesome, stupid simplicity of the plot. Again, as said before, plot is not usually the big aspect of a roguelike, except for Hades, but this one is gloriously simple and, again, so stupid it's awesome. The dungeon ate everyone. Yeah, the dungeon entrance, shaped like a monster face, as is standard in many places, just rose up out of the ground and tornado inhaled the entire town, wrecking buildings and sucking down all the people, and it's up to you to go save them. And other than the basic starting sword, which is automatic, everything is pretty much random what you get. It really gets good when you happen to find weapons/gear that sync together, gaining boosted stats and even new abilities. Though in my humble opinion, some of the boosts aren't worth filling your limited equip/inventory slots with the prerequisite gear in place of better stuff you might have. But most are pretty good. And as you save people in the dungeon, they'll reopen useful businesses in town, like a blacksmith who grants a random free weapon or equip item before every run, or the combat trainer who lets you buy some pretty cool abilities with skill points. This won't be the playstyle for everyone, but my advice is to always try to snag and hold on to at least one weapon that goes through walls. Saves a lot of grief in the long run. Also, I just want to say in one playthrough, I was briefly the god of damage over time. Poison and burn damage, boosted damage on each, I'll point out, plus acceleration buffs for both types, so enemies took more hits in the time they were afflicted. Oh, that and the pocket watch that adds plus 5 seconds to any status affliction. Glorious. Lost Castle. To wrap up this list, I'm recommending a good old-fashioned beat-em-up, except, as it's in this video, it's a roguelite, so, yeah, all random. No chance to learn and memorize the type and location of every enemy, like in, say, Double Dragon. Do kids even remember Double Dragon? Anyway, you start off in a prison cell, in a dungeon full of goblins, and goblins are crap jailers, so not only do you start off armed with a random weapon, but as you unlock more boosts, there's this veritable little indoor mall right outside your cell with additional weapon option, random loot and potions, and other perks. All sorts of monsters and assorted beasts stand between you and the titular castle, although I'm not sure it's that lost. You kind of progress directly to it over the course of play, gathering new weapons, armors, consumables, spells, and combat items along the way, obliterating giant spiders, rocks-throwing cyclopses, and eventually a castle swarming with demons. The bosses are randomized, and you unlock new equips every time you beat a certain boss for the first time. I love games like this with the hand-drawn, cartoonish look. It lends itself well to a high-charged, frenetic series of fights. And that brings us to the end of this list. Might do another one, might not. Not sure. As far as I'm aware, I've pretty much recommended every roguelike I own that's worth recommending. And I had to buy a couple extras just to pad out this list. But I like this kind of game, so I will over time acquire more. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed some of these. And if you haven't seen the first video, I really recommend you go check it out over on Wolfpack Gaming. Thank you very much and good night.